Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live emergency update from Team Dominator headquarters. First one of this year here, too. I've been all over the place here to begin the new year. Just got back from Mount Washington, where we sampled a 94-mile-an-hour wind gust, which is absolutely insane. There were bodies rolling everywhere. Impossible to basically stand up in anything like that. But we are in the middle of a very active, insane January 2024 pattern. Maybe one of the most active that I've ever chased. And I'm going to give you a breakdown on the tornado threat that's starting to ramp up right now down in Florida. So central, southern Florida, especially southern Florida along that convective line, just to the southwest of Lake Okeechobee, I'm watching a storm that looks very favorable for tornado potential. I think that the tornado threat's going to be increasing near and to the west of that Palm Beach area where there's been a little bit of more clean outflow. And also Monday, Tuesday looks like a tornado outbreak. I'm going to tell you exactly where that's going to be happening. Blizzard conditions on the northwest side. A lot of models are showing that surface low deepening into the 970s as it moves up Illinois, eventually up into the Great Lakes region. So this is a live emergency update on the insane January pattern. Classic El Nino ripper too. And I've seen a lot of similarities to the Tuesday setup to the Kissimmee tornado in 1998. That was in February, I believe like February 22nd. It was in 1998, and that was the last time that we had a really strong El Nino like we have right now. An eastern tropical Pacific El Nino just raging out there. And the tornado threat is increasing right now across the southern Florida peninsula. It's increasing a lot. And you can see the radar there. Let me type this out. Got to send out this notification, and then we're going to break down the forecast models. But you can definitely see those supercell storms. There's a couple areas that I think in the near term that have the greatest tornado potential. You've got these coming in near Golden Gate, and we already have that tornado warning now. And I just actually saw a post that this produced a tornado on the eastern shores of Lake Okeechobee out in this area west of Indiantown. So we've got a tornado warning headed toward Palm City, Florida. There you can see that active tornado warning on the north side of the screen. Let me pop that down just a little bit so you can see the towns that are in the path of it. It's heading just to the south of Port St. Lucie as well. Strong rotation out here. Might even be the confirmed tornado that happened on the eastern shores of Lake Okeechobee. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado moving east at 30 miles an hour. Palm City by 2:20 p.m. Jensen Beach, Port Salamo, Sewell's Point around 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. We can look at the rotation from Miami radar. So this is our first tornado warning, and you can see a couple areas of interest. This one off to the north, and also kind of that main area of rotation right now. We can try to see if we can get a radar site that might be able to sample this a little bit better, maybe up in Melbourne. And there you can see that rotation. That's approaching I-95 near Palm City. Pretty strong rotation, a very stout mesocyclone right there. We've got strong wind shear as well with a 50-knot low-level jet out in this area. I've been looking at the photographs as well, and we identified this area as the greatest tornado potential because there's relatively clean inflow off to the south of it. You don't really have that stratiform rain. Even though you do a little bit further south, there is a little bit of sun here on the northwestern fringe of that rain shield, and you definitely do have a little bit of clean inflow near Palm City, Stuart, Florida, and the area of interest would be right about there. You can kind of see that RFD that's coming off to the south. This would be the RFD gust front, a little bit of an inflow notch, probably a left split peeling off to the north as well. But definitely a strong mesocyclone, and it appears to be deviant. It's moving a little bit off to the north. Watch it. Oh, two mesocyclones. And it definitely is getting that left-hand turn, it seems, as it's approaching I-95. So wouldn't be surprised if that has a tornado on the ground. And you can definitely see this one tried to get going, and it was kind of became a left split like mesocyclone. Maybe it had the kind of double-barreled mesocyclone appearance. But anytime you get that storm relative inflow that ramps up like that, right here, you can see that area of bright coloring. That's basically the inflow that's streaming into that mesocyclone. And you have some decent gate-to-gate wind shear there as well. So we got our first tornado warning. Just went live here. I'm going to be activating live storm chase mode big time coming up here Monday through Tuesday. And I have to decide whether I'm going to start in the Houston area, rip it east all the way along I-10. Probably going to be in New Orleans, southern Louisiana, Monday night. into Tuesday morning near Mobile. And the low-level jet to the east of this increases above 70 knots, folks. So that's Monday into Tuesday. I think that there could be a tornado outbreak Monday night into Tuesday. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple dozen tornadoes from this. And we might be about to get our second tornado from this event, this storm system. And I'm going to show you the snow maps too for the Northeast. Even though a lot of the models are kind of showing the 10-to-1 and the Kuchera method snow maps are starting to increase up in Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, back to the higher terrain of southern New York, I think you're really going to need some of that mountainous terrain because the snow depth maps show a lot less snow, especially near Boston proper, right near the ocean. You're going to get 44-degree surface temperatures just offshore. Warm nose is likely going to come in, and then that's probably going to decrease those snowfall ratios. But a lot's still going to fall. It's still going to be very impactful in Boston as well, and it looks like we're losing a little bit of the reflectivity on that storm. The reason why I went live was actually because of this storm on the southern shores of Lake Okeechobee, right near Lake Harbor, and I was starting to see the mesocyclone increase on this, and I'm also aware that the environment is quite favorable for tornadoes, especially if any of these can carve out any surface-based instability. But there you can start to see that mesocyclone begin to increase as well. And this is why I went live. You've got a lot of storm relative inflow here in red. That's starting to ramp up. You've got an RFD coming around the backside there in green. And you definitely do have an intensifying mesocyclone right along the southern shores of Lake Okeechobee with this one as well, southwest of Lake Harbor. But you still do have a lot of precipitation, stratiform precip, a lot of that's tainting the inflow into this storm, or this would already be a tornado producer. You could definitely see kind of a hook-like appendage there, pretty sharp reflectivity gradient on the southeastern side of that storm. So I do think that eventually is going to develop tornado potential as well. And then we've got another one back here near Orange Tree. These ones that are making landfall near Marco Island do have water spout potential as well, especially this beam that just came ashore near Marco Island. But these are mainly squalls, and I think that on this portion of the squall line, especially when this portion starts to approach southwestern Florida and portions of the Everglades, the surface winds are going to go a little bit more southwesterly ahead of it, and that's going to reduce some of the wind shear. But so far today, we've had a lot of this stratiform rain, a little bit of outflow that's been sagging south, and so far today, that's kind of minimized the tornado threat despite really strong wind shear. And I'll show you what the wind shear looks like right now on this website, folks. Oh yeah, look at this. This is a hodograph. Look at that hodograph. Wow. So this is near Miami, southeast of the convective line, but I know that there's a ribbon of stronger low-level flow just ahead of the front. And so I think that these hodographs actually get a little bit more favorable closer to those storms. But your 1 kilometer wind due southwest to northeast, that's your vector up there, and it's at 30 knots. And I know that the low-level jet increases above 40 and maybe even 50 knots as you get a little bit closer to that convective line, at least based on the forecast models. But still roughly supportive of tornadoes. You've got 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative velocity greater than 200 with this, and that's because your surface wind is out of a due south, even southeasterly direction near the Miami area. A little bit closer to the front, the low-level jet increases probably up to about 40 knots right here, and your surface wind is a little bit more veered because of that kind of broadened out frontal circulation, but still wind shear that is supportive, folks, of tornado potential. This is the HRRR model, and this is what I was talking about with that low-level jet of about 50 knots right along the frontal zone, southwest near 50 knots, 50 right there, that red. That is the sufficient low-level wind shear for tornado potential. You can see it down here across the southern Florida peninsula. I'll lift that up a little bit. And we're also going to be breaking down the outbreak Monday into Tuesday. I'm going to show you some snowfall maps too, but of course I have to start with a more immediate tornado threat. Right now we've got a tornado warning just to the east of Lake Okeechobee, headed towards Stewart, Lake City. And the wind shear starts to decrease a little bit as the tail end of that convective line starts to slide down the southwestern coastline of Florida. You're looking at about 30 to 40 knots out of the southwest at a low-level jet. So you do lose a little bit of that wind shear. But you definitely right near where those storms are moving right now, this is likely what that wind shear profile looks like. Even though the surface temperature is at 79 degrees, it seems just a little bit high. But that hodograph is on the upper right portion of the screen, folks. And this is the most insane January pattern that I think I've ever chased, January of 2024. If these models are even remotely accurate, Probably should be down in Florida today, but I was up in Mount Washington and we sampled a 94-mile-an-hour wind up there. Probably going to have up near 100-mile-an-hour winds up in Mount Washington now. And you got a southwest wind at 40 knots. This is likely the representative hodograph for those storms that are moving along the southern shores of Lake Okeechobee. And that does look supportive of tornadoes, especially if your surface-based instability is actually like this, with temperatures in the upper 70s, dew points up near 67. Another weakness of this setup is you don't really have a dry slot charging in the mid-levels to clear out those clouds and to lead to those surface temperatures even greater. But that's a pretty good low-level jet, up above 40 knots, and it might even be a little bit stronger than that. To put things into perspective, Monday night into Tuesday, that low-level jet could be even pushing 80 knots. And I'm going to show you what that setup looks like as well. But I think as this convective line slides off to the south over the western tip of Florida, I think that this portion of the line is probably not going to have as high of a tornado potential as the current mode that's near Lake Okeechobee. And so you can see some of those offshore storms just off the southwestern coast of Florida. This portion of the line just going to continue to sag down along the southwest coastline of Florida. And then the surface winds go more southwesterly ahead of that. That's weakening low-level wind shear ahead of that. I think it's going to minimize the tornado threat with that portion of the line. But any of these storms up here, which now that convection is a little bit further to the south on near Lake Okeechobee, those I do think have greater tornado potential because they're interacting with that strong low-level jet. And I'm going to be activating live storm chase mode, of course, possibly starting as early as Monday afternoon near the Houston area up toward College Station, and I'm going to be pushing east along I-10 and along southern Louisiana Monday night, late Monday night, pushing into the New Orleans area, Houma, eventually pushing up toward Mobile by Tuesday morning. And then this area here, southeast, central southern Georgia, much of Florida Peninsula, then pushing into eastern South Carolina on Tuesday. Looks like a pretty big outbreak. But we're watching this tornado threat right now in Florida. And we're going to go back to that radar. That could be a supercell there southeast of Golden Gate. You can definitely tell when those storms are rotating a lot more because they produce a lot of lightning as well. So Palm City, you've got a tornado warning. Let's see if that is observed or radar indicated. Capable of producing just radar indicated, moving east at 30. It does look like the reflectivity pattern is weakening a little bit as it's moving into Palm City and Stewart, getting a little bit closer to the coast. So likely losing some of its instability a bit as that slides off to the east. But definitely get in your safe place, Stewart. And we're also watching a little bit off to your southwest. This portion right here is starting to rotate. It's moving over the southern portion of Lake Okeechobee right now. And that storm was really starting to ramp up, starting to get a lot more rotation. And I want to watch that area for an intensifying mesocyclone. A stronger mesocyclone, though, to the south of that. And look at this right mover. And relatively clean air out ahead of that storm, too. So if that can continue moving off to the right, this could definitely be your next tornado producer. And you can see some of this air out in front of it. Probably had a little bit of surface heating. You can see this supercell tried to get going as well off to the northeast. Still could get going as well to the south of Belle Glade. But this one is moving right. Strong mesocyclone, moving off to the right. It's a right mover. And I think that one has the potential of producing a tornado as it slides off to the east. Look at that mesocyclone. It's a persistent mesocyclone. It's associated with some outflow, too, back to the southwest of it, which could also help to minimize the tornado threat for this next round coming in from Ave Maria. But this has the potential of producing a tornado. Look at that mesocyclone just trucking off to the east. And you get a lot of lightning, too, when you get a stronger mesocyclone like that. The more that it's rotating, the stronger the updraft is. And that means that it's going to be producing a lot of lightning because it's starting to loft grapple. And that's what's so important for charge separation. But I do want to show you the winter side of this as well. There you can see the latest European model that kind of shows an uptick in the snowfall totals across eastern Massachusetts. Boston proper gets a lot less because the water temperatures out here over the Atlantic are about 44 degrees, and you're going to get a warm nose of those easterlies coming in. And this is the amount of snow that falls. And a lot of the snow depth maps show like 8 to 12 inches out here. But definitely shows you where the max is going to happen. Interior Massachusetts, southeastern New Hampshire, and back towards southern New York Hunter Mountain's probably going to be a winner as well. But I was just up in Mount Washington, as I mentioned, 94-mile-an-hour wind gust up there. That was as that initial storm came through. A front came through with that high pressure in the northeast. That brought those temperatures down. And here are some of the scenes from Mount Washington. Bodies flying everywhere out there. And they're going to get winds up to 100 miles an hour up there again coming up this weekend. So it went pretty crazy up there in Mount Washington. 94-mile-an-hour wind gust, and that was with the Stormfront Freaks podcast. It went all the way up here near Mount Washington, where the strongest wind of 231 miles per hour was measured. Well known as the worst weather anywhere in the world up in Mount Washington. So that was definitely an intense, once-in-a-lifetime experience up there. And I was thinking about staying up there for the snow event, but I'm worried I was going to be trapped in Boston way up here when I need to work the severe weather threat Monday through Tuesday. And it looks like the threat of daytime tornadoes is actually pretty good across the Houston area Monday afternoon, and then Monday night that pushes off to the east, southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama. And then on Tuesday, which could be the biggest day out of all of them, southern Georgia, eventually into eastern South Carolina, but especially northern into central Florida. You've got about a 70 to 80 knot low-level jet ahead of that system that I'm going to break down. And here's that system. You get lee cyclogenesis, blizzard conditions, southeastern Colorado, northern Texas Panhandle, all the way through Kansas potentially, and eventually those blizzard conditions push up to the Great Lakes as that low bombs out into the 970s. But the severe weather looks pretty significant, likely near Houston, as I mentioned on Monday, and then pushing off to the east as well. This is 500 millibar temperatures. They're going to be about minus 32 degrees C as this comes in. Look at this barrel, and you get a lot of flow on the backside. It's continuing to deepen as it ejects out of the southwestern U.S. Big bulbous, minus 31 degrees C upper level conditions, and it gains that negative tilt as it approaches Monday night into Tuesday. Negatively tilted troughs, you get a ton of vorticity advection out ahead of those. You get the strongest of low-level jets, and on this one we have about a 70 to 80 knot low-level jet, which is pretty remarkable. Off to the northeast, this is the GFS snow depth. Shows you where the heaviest snow is going to happen, probably in the higher terrain, maybe from the Poconos from northeastern Pennsylvania into southern New York, including Hunter Mountain, Berkshires, up through portions of Vermont get hit pretty hard, and also this little swath, interior Massachusetts, southeastern New Hampshire. Mount Washington's going to get a lot of snow as well up there, 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts once again, and coastal Maine might even be able to get on the action, but a little bit less right along the coastline. And Boston proper down through Cape Cod, a lot less because of that warm nose that's going to come in. You're going to get some melting, even though a lot of that snow is going to fall. But this is the snow depth change. And then you go over to what's going to fall and watch the difference here. And that's a 10-to-1 ratio. And so it shows that a lot more falls, but you'll get some compaction, you'll get some melting. And when you get a lot of discrepancy between that snow depth change and some of these other models, 10-to-1 snowfall ratios, the Kuchera method, then you don't want to trust them quite as much. But in this case, you're going to get a little bit more melting. But this is probably more accurate for Boston proper, maybe 6 to 8 inches it'll look like. But a lot more of that is also going to fall. And you'll probably have a stripe over southeastern New Hampshire, up through southeastern Maine of quite a bit more. Up near Freiburg, we'll probably get a lot, maybe some double-digit totals. And it's also trending up for Mount Washington, even though that pressure gradient is going to be a little bit further south. Still going to get on the northern fringes of that pressure gradient, and with those northwest or southeasterly winds, you're probably going to get more wind gusts up above 100 miles an hour. That's Kuchera. So I just showed you 10-to-1, and then this is the Kuchera method. See how it has a little bit less. So it's assuming that especially some of these areas right along the coastline, especially out near the Cape, that you should be getting a little bit less than 10-to-1. But it is interesting that the Kuchera method has these double-digit snowfall totals near Boston proper as well. You also have to factor in some dynamical cooling with the very heavier rates, but usually that's when you have cold air just above the ground. And in this case, you're probably going to have a warm nose coming in. And this does look pretty accurate. This is the NAM snow depth change, 3 to 6 inches. But remember that European model definitely shows kind of an uptick in the snowfall total. So I wouldn't be surprised if these are actually a little closer than a foot, a little closer to a foot, with another max down here across the higher terrain as well. But look at the Kuchera method NAM model. Shows a little bit more. Even Boston proper gets double-digit snowfall totals and a lot more back toward Hunter Mountain. But because these maps look so different, it's difficult to trust some of these snowfall rates. And we've already got 1 to 2 inch per hour snowfall rates that have moved out of Maryland up into southern Pennsylvania. Still rocking out there. We'll go back really quick and check out the ongoing tornado threat down in Florida, and then we're going to shift to Monday and Tuesday. But this is the reason I went live, is this supercell right here. And I think that with the magnitude of low-level shear so significant, and look at these little new beans that are lifting off to the north. Watch out, Palm Beach. West Palm Beach, watch out, because these supercell storms, you can tell that they are thriving off a very strong low-level wind shear. Look at how smooth they are, or laminar. They have these sickle shapes, almost shaped like the hodograph. You got a little left split there, and they're moving a little bit more northerly because they're lower top, so they're really feeling that 50-knot southwesterly low-level jet right now. Well, let's see what the rotation's like on these storms. Starting to increase. They have smaller mesocyclones. They're smaller in size, but I am keeping an eye on that because I know how favorable the wind shear is ahead of that storm, and we have a much healthier mesocyclone off to the west. Here's Lake Okeechobee. That's the southern shores of the lake. Looks like that storm kind of died. So this one we're watching next. And also my good buddy Brady Tom down near Marco Island. He's on the shoreline. He said it kind of looks like a nothing burger down there. Definitely a lot of stratiform clouds as well with the main convective line. But behind this portion here off to the east, you get kind of a decrease in the low-level shear as the surface winds become more southwesterly ahead of this line. So I think these will probably be more of a damaging wind threat. And then the wind shear really decreases as this portion of the line slides down through the Everglades. So this is the area that we're watching. And you can see that it's been relatively clean here too. You've got a lot of stratiform rain back to the southwest. Sometimes in Florida though, when you get that stratiform rain, it can actually decouple the boundary layer and kind of lead to a slippery lower condition, and it can actually increase the tornado potential or back some of those surface winds a little bit more, increasing the low-level shear. But to the east of that stratiform blob here that so far I think has actually been doing the opposite, slowing down the tornado potential, this environment here, basically Coral Springs, Fort Lauderdale, especially up toward West Palm Beach, toward Jupiter, that's the area that has the strongest low-level shear and a relatively clean environment too for storms. And we know that there's a lot of wind shear over that portion too. So now I want to break down Monday and Tuesday, and I'm going to bring in my friend Marcus Reynolds too, good up and coming storm chaser, self-taught meteorologist as well, and he has some thoughts about this upcoming system. But I'm going to break it down here, and then we're going to attempt to splice him in, and it could just cause a total crash of the computer. Keep that in mind. But so I'm going to cover this first. This is the area I'm watching Monday afternoon for daytime supercell potential. I'm going to show you what the 3-kilometer NAM looks like and how favorable it looks like near and to the west of the Houston area Monday afternoon. And then it looks like the threat of tornadoes just ripping on shore, landfalling, supercellular waterspouts moving off to the northeast at like 60 miles an hour, ripping through the marshes of southern Louisiana, making it up to the I-10 corridor, maybe even further north than that. But not a big fan of these graphics, but the trends in this CSU product definitely is something that I use, and it shows that late night, Monday night into Tuesday morning, that threat of tornadoes really increases from Houma, New Orleans, up through Gulfport, Mobile by Tuesday morning, and then watch out, southern Georgia, central northern Florida into eastern Carolinas on Tuesday. Looks like a tornado outbreak is going to be happening, and I want to break this down and do a deep dive on all of this. And we'll go back to Monday. On the models, I want to look first at the trough ejection. We'll look a little bit at trough geometry, and then we're going to dig down on Monday afternoon near the Houston area. I know the national title game is going to be happening Monday evening, so I think that front's going to be way east of the national title game by Monday evening by game time. It'll probably be out over portions of Louisiana by that time. Big time trough. Look at that thing, folks. That is nasty right there. So I don't want to cause any panic or anything, so don't panic, of course, but this is the most significant January pattern I probably ever chased. And it's starting to gain its negative tilt. It's neutrally tilted here. It has a lot of strong flow in the backside of the system as it moves through the southwestern U.S., and then once it ejects across the southern plains, that strong flow rips around the base of the trough and then arrives on the east. And it definitely has that subtropical connection as well. Classic El Nino pattern. Energized southern branch of the jet, and now we've got cold air to work with as well, but the warm sectors of these systems are going to have wintertime tornado outbreaks, and probably could even see 15 to 20 tornadoes if I play my cards right. I'm trying to decide if I should fly to Houston and work the daytime threat and then chase all night Monday night to Tuesday across southern Georgia, central and northern Florida, or should I just position for the bigger day, which could be Tuesday, but probably going to have to go all night Monday night working that tornado threat, and you always want the potential for daytime tornadoes. So watch as we go through the day on Tuesday. This thing gains more of a negative tilt. This is Tuesday 15Z, kind of an egg-shaped vort that's going to lift up toward the Great Lakes region, become vertically stacked, intensifying surface low, moving up into Illinois into the 970s. There's your convective line right ahead of that speed max. And the big thing about this event is the low-level jet. Look at this. 83 knot low-level jet, 84 knot low-level jet, 1 kilometer above the ground over southern Georgia. Any storm, any convective line that moves into that environment is going to have the potential of producing fast-moving, destructive tornadoes. A lot of similarities between that Kissimmee event in February of 1998, especially with the El Nino characteristics. And look at that low-level jet increasing as it goes down into Florida. We'll zoom in a little bit, and this is Tuesday we're talking about here. Look at that low-level jet, 70 knots, 75 knots. And that's just above the ground near hurricane force winds. So you'd be at ground level in the nature coast here of Florida, and it'll look like just above the trees, you'll just see like near hurricane force winds just ripping. I remember the super outbreak. I woke up the morning, the sun felt really warm, and you could look up and see the low-level jet just racing at about hurricane force as well. Definitely this isn't probably not going to be a super outbreak because of the relatively limited instability because it's happening during the winter. But if this thing happened later on in the season, we'd be talking about a super outbreak. And this is Tuesday midday, and you can definitely use the 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index to show you where the instability axis is going to set up. And you've got basically PDS soundings all over central Florida. There's your elevated mix layer. Different than the current setup that's happening right now, and there is tornado potential now across portions of Florida. But this Tuesday setup, because of that negatively tilted trough, because of that trough geometry, you get a dry slot that comes in over top the moisture. So you've got like temperatures in the upper 70s, dew points in the upper 60s, and it's because of this dry slot that comes over the top of that moisture, clearing out the clouds. And also because of that negatively tilted trough, you have a more due southerly low-level jet. 50 to 60 knots there, and that's going to increase 70 knots, so a dramatic increase. And you even have a little bit more of some backed upper level winds, which could lead to less of the HP variety. But this is Tuesday, probably going to be a big outbreak. And let's look at the NAM model now that we're within range. And similar instability axis during the day on Tuesday. And then look at eastern South Carolina Tuesday evening. You've got PDS soundings there across the South Carolina low country. That right there, folks, is a nasty hodograph. Look at that meat hook of a hodograph there. Weird little loop there of negative SRH. But if you get a storm that's able to be surface spaced and sample that wind shear, and that storm has probably some sufficient mass, because you do have some pretty long storm relative inflow vectors going from the tip of the storm motion vector. That's moving at 60 knots. So storm motion is going to be very fast. You're just going to have these storms cruising 60 knots, making landfall, moving into the southeast. And you got a southeasterly surface wind at 20 knots, 1 kilometer wind near 70 knots right there, 50 knots of bulk shear. And that's all driven by that crazy low-level jet ahead of this. These are probably my favorite storm systems to chase just because they are nasty. These winter storms, they're dynamic. You know, they have tornadoes in the warm sector. They often have blizzards on the cold side. But we also need to watch out over East Texas. Watch out Florida Panhandle Tuesday morning. And look at the NAM here on Tuesday afternoon. Brings in big instability into southeast Texas, folks, and that's the regular NAM. And I'm going to go over to the 3-kilometer NAM here next. That's big instability, big shear too. You've got a major low-level jet out there over southeastern Texas. 55 to 60 knot low-level jet, obviously no slouch. And you can also look at the instability axis using the 0 to 3 kilometer EHIs. Look at that, big instability. There's Houston, Galveston Bay. Could even initiate just to the east of Austin and San Antone. And yes, please dominate that like button. Thank you, Team Dominator members. I'm going to ramp up these lives for members only too, these in-depth analyses, but this is such a significant January that I figured I got to go live for everybody. And you've even got some backed winds at the surface in 1 kilometer due to that negatively tilted trough. But watch out, Mobile into the Florida Panhandle as well, but this is near Houston, just to the west of Houston in the daylight hours with surface-based instability. Look at that low-level profile there. So you've already got like 40 knots of 0 to 1 kilometer bulk shear, folks. So there could even be strong tornadoes in East Texas on Monday afternoon during the daylight hours. These hodograph overlays are cool too. Look at those hodographs. On the western edge of the instability axis, they become more straight line, more hailers. So you're probably going to need those prefrontal storms to develop near Port Lavaca, southwest of Houston. There's your warm front. And then as you go through the afternoon, that warm front lifts through the Houston area. And then you start to focus near the Sabine River. If I chase here near the Houston area on Monday, then I'm going to have to blast east and stay up all night to position for the Tuesday setup. But it does look like there's going to be a daytime tornado threat in East Texas as well. Got to make that final decision tomorrow. And then there's your instability axis. This is the 3-kilometer NAM. And it has this main convective line. This is a 12Z run. And these renegades that will develop as well. There's one that comes in near Houston. And you've got these prefrontal confluence lines that appear to develop. This is Monday afternoon, folks. Targeting that portion of southeastern Texas. Big instability just to the west of Houston, and then the warm front lifts through. And then this warm front's going to be approaching the Louisiana coastline overnight, Monday night into Tuesday morning. You can see how you get an abundance of precip on the north side of that warm front through isentropic lift coming in over top that stable air. And watch what happens when I go to 0 to 3 EHI. There's your warm front approaching the marshes there of southern Louisiana. That is Monday, late afternoon, Monday at 5 p.m. And then we go to 0Z, and you finally start to get that surface-based instability coming onshore over southern Louisiana. And that's going to bring with it a strong tornado threat over southeastern Louisiana around midnight. Near Homa, up toward New Orleans, there's Lake Pontchartrain. And you click on a forecast sounding right over the Homa, Louisiana area. And look at that 70-knot low-level jet. Right up there, look at that hump on that hodograph. That is a nasty hodograph that you really only see in the warm sectors of these strong wintertime mid-latitude cyclones. You've got a due southerly wind at 20 knots. You've got a 1 kilometer wind at 70. Bulk shear 50 knots between the surface wind and 1 kilometer wind. And then you get also strong upper level winds ventilating these updrafts. Anything that moves into that environment is going to have the potential of producing strong tornadoes. Watch out New Orleans. And then eventually the threat shifts off to the east, moving onshore near the Mobile area at about 2 to 3 in the morning. And forecast soundings look very supportive of tornadoes. And it even looks like as that trough begins to get a negative tilt, look at that elevated mix layer on the left side of the screen. Wow. That's a dry slot charging east near the Mobile area. And that means that the trough is starting to get that negative tilt. You used to have a lot more easterlies here in your surface wind and your 1 kilometer wind. Giant hook-shaped hodograph there as well. And then look at that low-level jet, southeasterly winds back below it. Pretty nasty. Looking back to see if there's any more of those tornado warnings. I got to go back to Florida right now, folks, because we have an emergency update on that. Going back to Florida, watch that storm, our target storm south of Lake Okeechobee there. That thing is beginning to intensify. Watch the trend. And you see a sharper gradient and reflectivity on the east side there. That says its updraft is increasing. Definitely means the mesocyclone is beginning to increase. This thing has a tornado threat. Your mesocyclone is located right about there. You can see kind of an RFD, even a little bit of a hook shape. That's your hook right about there. And then you've got this flanking line extending off to the south. So let's watch that area for rotation. There it is. It's increasing its rotation too. That's a pretty strong mesocyclone right there. I do think that that's going to have some tornado potential shortly. And it has some relatively clean air off to the east of it too. Look at that relatively clean air to the east of that thing. That's also a big deal out here when you're watching severe weather. Thank you everybody for dominating that like button. These lives are for the more serious extreme weather enthusiast. Sometimes when I go in depth like this, I get comments, F you, I don't understand those words. But I try to communicate also with a little bit of slang as well to try to show, to try to communicate and reach everybody, not only the serious severe weather enthusiast. But that's a storm that I think has some tornado potential right here. Look at that thing lifting off to the northeast. And you know that it's got good wind shear as well out ahead of it. Look at all these beans that are developing out ahead of that storm between it and West Palm Beach. This one up northwest of Wellington's also starting to intensify. Bean-shaped supercell here, northwest of Wellington. Yeah, waiting for the new velocity signature. So this mesocyclone still has some increasing to do, but it definitely is in that environment of some pretty strong low-level wind shear. Gotta watch out for that. But this one I think is more mature. It's larger in mass. It's a larger storm, has some higher echo tops, and that's definitely a storm that I've got my eye on right here. Ooh, look at that. This thing probably needs to go tornado warn, folks. Right there, we've got strong gate-to-gate wind shear there. I should have left the northeast and then bombed all the way down to Florida to chase this, but I had to pick up my medicine here in South Carolina after the Mount Washington adventure. Oh, look at that Renegade Supercell. That thing is looking nasty right there, everybody. Wow. Let's just watch this. I think this thing's going to go tornado warn pretty soon. It's on the south side of Lake Okeechobee, right over here. So hang with me. Dominate that like button in the meantime. It definitely has some clean inflow off to the east of it. I'm going to post this to Twitter really quick and let people know, watch out, folks. This thing is going tornadic. We got a Renegade Supercell just south of Lake Okeechobee. And it's right on the eastern edge, too, of that stratiform rain. Live update on Supercell intensifying south of Lake Okeechobee. With rapidly increasing tornado potential. So we should see our viewers just rocket here now. But we are watching this supercell storm. Look at these reflectivity values increase. And look at that. It even has a chunkier hook now. It's starting to get a more compact appearance. So this thing might already have a tornado on the ground. I wouldn't be surprised. That's a very tight couplet. Gate-to-gate wind shear right there. It looks like it might be trying to shed that vortex. Maybe this one's riding the RFD nose. A lot of times these couplets will just ride that RFD nose and then anchor underneath the mesocyclone, and then they'll produce. But pretty strong gate-to-gate wind shear. Let's see if there's a TDS signature. Not seeing one yet. That's obvious. Good job, Brandon. Got a nice live stream of that snowstorm up there. It's great to see all these younger chasers really blossom out there. Live streams, and boy, has it changed a lot since the pandemic. Everybody's a meteorologist and a storm chaser now, it seems like. I've definitely seen just an explosion of our industry. It's always good to see. So there's the supercell storm we're tracking just south of Lake Okeechobee. It's got a chunkier hook on it now. And we know that the environment that that's moving into is pretty favorable. So I do think that we're going to see a tornado warning on this. It even looks more favorable for tornadoes than the tornado warned storm. And you kind of have this stratiform precip coming in. Might even be some kind of a thermal boundary that this storm is riding, kind of on the northern edge of that stratiform precipitation. But then you've got these renegade storms to the east that are moving more rapidly off to the north. Watch this one. If you're in Palm Beach, watch that storm, that bean-shaped storm just to your west. That thing has some tornado potential too. And you can see that storm relative inflow begin to increase on the east side of it. Definitely starting to get that mesocyclone starting to ramp up. But there's our target storm that probably may have a tornado already. That's some big-time gate-to-gate shear. And the tornado potential is rapidly increasing with this storm. It's a renegade storm, textbook. RFD gust front here, so you got the RFD coming around the south side. And you kind of have this chunky hook in the reflectivity pattern as well. That's probably one of the stronger couplets that we have seen so far. Gotta be kidding me, 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 gotta be kidding me with that. Right on that northern edge, it does look like it's riding some kind of a thermal gradient. This portion of the line, the tornado threat decreases back behind this because it looks like there's some kind of outflow pattern right here that this northern portion of the line is moving into. And then south of that, down near the Everglades, the surface winds move to a more southwesterly direction. These storms right here, though, do have some pretty significant tornado potential just to the west of Palm Beach. And thank you, Team Dominator members, for making these updates possible, for making it possible for us to storm chase. We've got a lot of big plans with the Dominators. We want to get Dominator 1, 2, and 3 operational this year, at least chasing locally in the Southern Plains. So we've got Curtis that's coming down from Canada, and then starting here in about 9 days, we're going to be fixing up the Dominator 3 for tornado season, and also gearing up Dominator 1 and 2 for more localized chases. But nice bean-shaped supercell here to the northwest of Wellington, Florida. And we're also monitoring this one. There's Lake Okeechobee. And this thing's just moving almost due east. Little tick north of east. And intensify. Look at it emerge out of that stratiform precip. And as that storm intensifies, it kind of carves out some of the stratiform precip too. You get a little sinking motion around the storm and the environment around it. And it almost creates its own environment. Look at that. Just carving out some of the stratiform precip. Watch it intensify on that southern edge. And it looks like the last scan, we've lost some of those bright velocities, but you still have that strong storm relative inflow. And a lot of times they'll go up, go back down, bubble back down, and kind of ebb and flow like that. So I want to show you now Tuesday really quick as we're waiting for that thing to percolate. Tuesday over the southeastern U.S. is a big time setup. And it's going to start in the Florida Panhandle and rapidly move east through the afternoon, midday into early afternoon, and then shift toward North Carolina after that. So here it is for Tuesday. It's Monday night. There we go. There's the models. And focus in on the low-level jet for this setup. So watch over the Florida Peninsula, near where those bright colors are located. Look at that low-level jet, 75 knots, hurricane-force winds gusting right above the trees, nature coast. Manatees are just packed in all those springs right now. And there's your convective line. So I'm thinking anywhere, northern Florida, southern Georgia, and then you also have a 70 to 80 knot low-level jet across South Carolina. You're probably going to have a wedge of cold air banked up against the Appalachians. So I think it's going to be a little removed from that central South Carolina toward the coastline, where you're really going to get that instability ramping up. And the low-level jet pushes, look at that, 80 knot low-level jet over the Tampa Bay area by Tuesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The profile down there is also going to be supportive of strong tornadoes, even that far down the line. And that's down near Tampa, Tuesday afternoon. Definitely kind of an elongated hodograph. A lot of storm relative inflow. You go from the tip of the storm relative inflow vector back to the hodograph, so storms are going to be pretty large out there in mass. At least the ones that are producing tornadoes will be. And then eastern South Carolina by Tuesday late afternoon. Bonkers. Look at that 80 knot low level jet. Look at that hodograph right there. And that spikes up to 80 knots as that negatively tilted trough kicks in. That's what causes that low level jet to be more backed, more due southerly, even southeasterly a little bit. Very fast storm motions too. Off to the northeast at 60 to 70 knots. And we can expand out to kind of show you the scale of that low-level jet. It goes all the way from central Florida all the way up to the southeastern Great Lakes. All of that yellow, that's your low-level jet. So major heat and moisture transport on the east side of this. And then your surface low that's down to like 978 millibars. And central Illinois is lifting up toward the Great Lakes region and a big ripper on the northwest side. And then your next system is coming into the Pacific Northwest by that time, and that also could have a tornado event in Dixie Alley. A lot of snow as well on the backside of it. But there it moves into eastern North Carolina too by Tuesday evening. Look at that. Outer Banks of North Carolina, 80 knot low level jet up to the Delmarva Peninsula. Just looks insane. But your surface base instability is a little lacking, so you might, by that time, you might just have a skinny squall line that moves through up there. And then there's your 982 low. Let me show you what some of these surface lows get down to up in Michigan on the GFS ensemble, all the ensemble members. The operational GFS has a 982 low by Tuesday evening over southern Lake Michigan. Your strongest gradient's a little bit removed from the low center. That's pretty common with these mid-latitude cyclones. But look at the GFS ensemble, folks. We'll look at the individual members. Look at that. 977, 983, 978, 983 for the operational. Well, that's the mean, isn't it? So the mean of all those, definitely, it's a certainty this thing's going to reach a very low pressure. Just whether it's in the mid 980s, low 980s, or into the 970s. And I bet it'll be into the 970s. And lifting up here into Canada, across Lake Huron. Wow. Gotta be kidding me with that. So we can look at the Storm Prediction Center. Let's look at the Storm Prediction Center outlook too here. And then we're going to have to go back to our storm. It's not tornado warned yet. No tornado warnings in Florida right now. So that's the good news. And I thought that storm was going to go tornado warned in a couple of scans. And it still could coming up here. We'll go back to the radar really quick. Show you how this our target storm looks. It still has that special weather statement, still waiting for that thing to intensify as it lifts off to the northeast. Still looks very healthy. A lot of mass as well. Let's see if this will work. All right, calling. All right, there he is. In 1 sec, we're going to pull in my good buddy here, Marcus Reynolds, and Storm Chaser, great forecaster as well. And he's going to show you some of his forecast maps really quick. And if it doesn't work, I'll have to shut it down, but it should be pretty awesome. Marcus does some incredible forecast maps. And see if I can get this to work. No. 1 second here, working on it. As we're watching the storm, just to the south of Lake Okeechobee, that continues to increase. See if this will work. Trying to do the window capture. We got it. All right, here we go. I'm going to make it a little smaller. Hold on. The audio is going to be a little tougher. Hold on. I don't think I have you on yet. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We are monitoring this tornado in Central Florida, and I'm going to monitor it very closely. So we're going to have to potentially cut Marcus off if that thing goes tornado warn. But we're going to be talking about the Monday setup. So here you go, Marcus. Take it away. Let me turn on your audio. Test.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, talk really loud, though.
All right. We good?
Yep. Think they can hear you.
All right. Sweet. So I just wanted to rehash a couple things since it's been a little bit with our trough, and it's just textbook. You get this digging jet streak along the west coast here, and you get this four corners low that continues to strengthen into the central U.S. and then turns negative tilt as it ejects across the southeast U.S. It's extremely strong trough here and very tightly wound bowling ball.
Hey, Marcus, it sounds like the audio has struggled a little bit. But yeah, hopefully you guys can hear me. Can you hear me? The audio's gone. Test. There we go, we're back. Okay. I think I still got you on here. Yeah, that didn't work out the best. Can you guys hear me now? Hey there, everybody. Okay, you can hear me now? Should be loud now. Thanks, guys. I think the problem was I was trying to bring in FaceTime on the audio, and then it ended up cutting it. Did it go to 0, or was it low? Oh, look at that latest scan. We have an increase. Looks like we got a little hook-like appendage on the southwest portion of that. That's the portion that we're watching. Yep, and we got an increase, too, in the storm relative inflow. We'll test this next. Am I still on? All right, guys, we're still watching this storm here, that Micro tornado warning in Florida. Looks like that last scan, we lost some of that strong storm relative inflow on it. It's doing kind of a battle right now because you have a lot of the stratiform rain that's trying to taint the quality of the inflow. And you saw when it kind of was able to carve out some of that inflow a little bit. And it looks like it's got a little hole in the reflectivity there as well. Yeah. Will they ever go tornado watch? Maybe not. Yeah, you can tell that this portion of the convection is definitely moving into some very strong low-level wind shear. And I do think that if there's any threat of a tornado, that's where it's going to happen. It doesn't look like they ever issued the watch. Believe it or not. Still have the MD up into southern Pennsylvania. And here is the risk area, the new day 3 risk area that came out earlier today. It did work too. I was able to get that screen share. Well, there's the bowling ball, the trough that's coming in, gaining that negative tilt. Here is the day 3 SPC outlook, folks. This is Monday. And there is a threat of some daytime tornadoes, even some strong tornadoes back toward Houston, even west of Houston first. Then that warm front comes ashore across southern Louisiana late Monday night, and then Tuesday morning, coastal Mississippi, coastal Alabama, eventually moving into the Florida Panhandle, and then this portion of Florida, northern Florida, southern Georgia, and eventually pushing into eastern South Carolina on day 4. This will probably be upgraded, I would assume. That includes Orlando, Tampa, Tallahassee, up towards Savannah on your day 4. Look at that. At least modest. Ooh, at least modest. Surface cyclogenesis. We use the word modest in my paper, the rocket, in our rocket paper, and the hater, well, never mind. But anyway, it's used very often in scientific literature and in these outlooks. I mean, every single meteorologist uses that word. But I kind of agree with the person. I mean, what does it actually mean? But I do think there's going to be possibly some blizzard conditions southeastern Colorado into the Oklahoma Panhandle, moving into southwestern Kansas. Appears probable Monday to Monday evening. Mid-60s dew points. Models continue to suggest. Yeah, the inland push of the surface space instability is really going to determine whether this goes big. But here it says the most significant severe weather potential still seems likely to await the development of the stronger dynamic forcing for ascent and related rapid surface cyclone deepening, which may impact parts of southeastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and southern Alabama, western Florida Panhandle by late Monday night, maybe even earlier, and potentially supportive of strong tornadoes. But I'm just going to have to decide whether to go to the Houston area for that daytime potential, which the NAM model is going berserk out there. And Monday morning on the latest HRRR model does show that system moving in. Here you go. Thanks, everybody. We are going to be going live, of course, storm chase mode. We're going to have Brian behind the screen, dominating as usual. But I got to decide whether I want to go out here west of Houston, which once you're west of Houston, it takes a long time to get east of Houston too. Or do I just go down to New Orleans, to Mobile, and wait there Monday night for the arrival of that strong tornado threat that could come ashore? Homa, New Orleans, up toward coastal Mississippi, coastal Alabama, that whole zone there. That's what we got to watch for. And then you can see the system bombing in. 70, 80 knot low-level jet ahead of this thing. And let's go back and look at that storm to the south of Belle Glade. But yeah, we're going to be chasing big time coming up here. And in fact, this whole month of January, I think, is going to be crazy. It's probably one of the crazier ones I've seen. But it looks like this storm's struggling a little bit. It seems like you have a little bit of this precip coming in on its east side, and structurally it's not very sound. And you have a couple of these other trailing storms on its outflow that are trying to wrap up as well. And I thought it was going to go tornado warned. So we'll just keep tracking that as it moves off to the east. That there was a tornado that happened on the eastern shores of Lake Okeechobee that I saw somebody post just a little bit ago. But just remember, coming up here, we got a big time threat for tornadoes. And it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight into Sunday here in Massachusetts, if we'll actually get over a foot on the ground or if that's what's going to fall. And then those snow depth forecasts by the models will be more accurate, which you'll struggle to see double digits on the ground, certainly. But usually I like to hedge high for these systems because sometimes the models have difficulty kind of capturing the nonlinearities out there that happen. So it's kind of like a rapidly intensifying hurricane sometimes. And when you get these real intense cyclones, sometimes it's difficult for them to kind of handle that moisture and heat transport that happens. And look at that thing down here. This is our setup, I think, on Tuesday. It really could bring some historic severe weather, tornadoes, and there are definitely a lot of similarities between that and the Kissimmee tornado that happened in 1998. So we've got a raging El Nino in the eastern tropical Pacific, just like 97, 98. And I think that we're definitely seeing that right now. And then it's possible toward the middle of January that an Arctic blast could be coming in. Look at that convective line. Then that included cyclone lifting up through the Great Lakes. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into this live emergency weather report. Please share this if you know anybody that lives in the warm sector or being impacted by the cold side as well. I'm going to be activating live storm chase mode Monday through Tuesday, and then I'll double back and get that next cyclone as it moves in. So thank you, everybody.